Welcome back, everybody, to the Weiner Wellness Virtual Summit. You are in for a special treat. We have Dr. Cynthia Clark with us, an applied kinesiologist as well. She's going to be talking about endurance training and nutritional needs. Now, this is awesome because you work with Dr. Baker, who we had on yesterday, who talked about bone health. And she speaks so highly of you and how you have really changed her practice, bringing the East and West. So this is exciting because this is the model that needs to happen. So I'm going to step back and just let you take it away. Please introduce yourself. Let us know what you do. And thank you so much for being here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having this and hosting this. I think that there's a great need for excellent information and education in today's society. We've certainly observed some difficulty in getting good information. So I really, really, really appreciate this opportunity to share some good work. And yes, so I'm Dr. Cynthia Clark. I'm an acupuncture physician, an applied clinical nutritionist. I'm the creator of Energy Evolution, and I'm the president of Longevity Wellness. And in our practice, we have 7 different practitioners ranging from medical doctor, registered dietitian, myself. I'm an applied clinical nutritionist, meaning that I use muscle testing to determine whole food supplements, and I have a certification in nutrition. And we have multiple different energy workers in our practice. So Reiki, esoteric healing, technology therapy, and mindset medicine and shamanic healing. And we work together synergistically. I was lucky enough to be getting to work with all of those practitioners, save Dr. Baker, who is the most recent addition to our clinic, when I went through my Ironman training last year. And it was a very weird year to be training for an Ironman because every Ironman race in the entire country was canceled, save one. And there's a lot of psychological wiggly wobbly that happens in that time. And what I mean is that most people thought that the race wasn't going to happen. And so a lot of people they signed up for it, but they didn't really train for it properly. And also there was just this attitude of, well, kind of maybe it's not that important. And when we got to actual race day, it was incredible because the athletes that had been jonesing for a race for so long, like the professional athletes, were there chomping at the bit, ready to go, so trained, so ready. But it was also it's the easiest course. Ironman Florida is flat. And the weather is usually really nice. So you really had a cross section of a lot of different people. And that's one thing that I really love about the endurance cardio training is that anybody can get into it because it's basically running, biking, and swimming if you do the triathlons, or it's just running if you do the running. And in some cases, it can be really inexpensive. So all a person needs to get started is a pair of shoes, and the better pair of shoes, the better experience you're going to have. Or you can spend tons of money on it. So, I have my super sexy triathlon bike on top of my car right now because I'm going to go for a ride in the hills tomorrow as part of my training. With clients who come to us who are doing this kind of training, it's exactly the same. They may be coming from, I just got off the couch and I want a goal. I want to walk my first 5K, or I want to do my first sprint triathlon, or they may be coming to us in a more elite training stage. So I wanted to share with you the 4 main contributors to endurance performance, and then talk to you about nutritional supplements that can help each one of those 4 categories. But I must start. I would be remiss if I did not start as an Oriental medicine practitioner without an explanation of yin and yang. And the reason for that is because these play out in the body and in our environment. So here's how the story goes. Yang is the sunshine. It's the bright, warm energy. I always say, picture a little 4-year-old boy running into a room full of kids and going, everybody run around. It's like the go, 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 right? It's what you feel like when you have your luscious cup of coffee in the morning. It's like, okay, I've got my go juice. So that's yang energy. Yin is the passive. It's the reflective. It's the moon. It's the ocean. And it's the substance. So medically in the body, yang is cellular metabolism. It's repair and rebuild. It's what helps you get stronger. And yin is the substance. It's the blood. It's the fluids. which we also need in order to get strong. Much of the thought of what we need in order to perform is centered around the boosting yang. And that's all well and good. And we really do need that. But we also need to consider the balance of yin in that process. So as I talk about these 4 important contributing factors, which are the VO2 max, the economy, the lactate threshold, and the maximal exercise performance, I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to orient those in terms of yin and yang. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the VO2 max. And this is really a boost yang. This is straight up boost yang. And I'm going to share a definition with you about this. So VO2 max is also called maximal oxygen consumption, maximum oxygen uptake, or maximum aerobic capacity. But pretty much everybody knows VO2 max. So it's the maximum rate of oxygen consumption measured doing incremental exercise. That is exercise of increasing intensity. The name is derived from 3 abbreviations, V, which actually has a little dot above the V, and that indicates per unit of time. O is for oxygen, actually O2 is for oxygen, and max for maximum. The measurement of VO2 max in the laboratory is pretty complicated, and most people don't go through I'm going to say a full-blown VO2 max test unless they're either a serious athlete or they're a more amateur athlete and have the funds and the interest to acquire that kind of information, because you have to do it on a treadmill. There's equipment that you get hooked up to, and so it just takes a little bit more. So what we do instead of going through all of that trouble, is that we use some estimates. By the way, the VO2 max proper, like when you do all the equations, if you want to sound like you really know something, you can go, oh yeah, the Fick equation. You use the Fick equation in that. So, but most of the time, we're going to use an estimate instead of the actual all the equipment. So the VO2 max is, the equation for that is Q, which stands for cardiac output, times CO2, which is arterial oxygen content, and CVO2, which is venous oxygen content. So, and like I said, we don't usually use that. We usually use an estimate that involves our heart rate max and our heart rate resting. And this is called the heart rate ration method. And it's heart rate max divided by heart rate resting times 15.3 milliliters per kilogram minute. Milliliters per kilogram minute. There are some other tests. There are the Cooper test, the Rockport test, and the multi-stage fitness test. Some of those require that you're either walking or running, so they may or may not be a fit for the person that you're testing. It's important to keep track of those things. In triathlons, there's actually a group of triathletes that are amputees, and they have their own categories. And so it's really cool, and we're aware that, like, oh, okay, you're competing with this. By the way, there is nothing more inspiring than feeling like you do not want to do your swim on a particular morning, going to the pool and realizing that the person next to you is doing their swim without an arm or a leg. So it's one of the most humbling and coolest and most inspiring sports that I've ever engaged in. And I just think it's wildly cool. So I really wanted to help share with you how to help them. So what's a good, what are good metrics? What are we looking for here? So an untrained, a non-athlete will have a VO2 max for men of about 35 to 40 milliliters per kilogram minute. For women, it's going to be 27 to 31, but that dramatically increases with training and in athletes. So you might be looking at as much as like 85 milliliters per kilogram minute. So I mentioned that was a tonify yang component of our training. So that VO2 max. The next category that I want to talk about is economy. So the less oxygen that you consume while running, then the better running economy you have. The less oxygen that you consume while exercising, the better performance you're going to have. As people start out, so if you're taking your beginner triathlete and you're starting them out, their economy is going to be really weak. And they're probably going to get sore very easily. They're going to have this lactic acid buildup. They're just going to get tired more quickly. Their heart rate will be higher as they're going. And the more that they train, the lower and more steady their heart rate will be. Their economy will start to increase and improve. Their lactic threshold will start to improve, and their maximal exercise performance will start to improve. So as we go along with those, exercise feels great, but when you're really pushing the boundaries of these thresholds, nutrition makes all the difference in the world. And the right supplements really are a huge game changer in the difference between having an experience that you want to continue and having okay, that kind of sucked, I'm done with that now. In my particular town that I live in, we have a very mature demographic. So we have a lot of athletes that are maybe starting triathlon in their 40s. So all of the information I'm giving you is exactly relevant to that category of people too. And one of my favorite stories to tell is while I was biking in the hills on this one particular triathlon, there was a gentleman that passed me going up this hill, passed me like I was standing still. Now in triathlon, they write your age on the back of your right cap. And so as he passed me, I could clearly see his age. And when I saw it, I just went, geez, because he was 73 years old. 73 years old. And there was a guy kind of a little bit back following him up. And he laughed when he heard me say that. And I said, I guess you must be hearing that a lot these days as you've been following him. And he said, I'm just trying to keep up with him. So it's very humbling and inspiring to be next to those people that are so dedicated to their health. The last race I did, I came in second in my age group, and I was beat out. I couldn't be more honored to share the podium with this lady. It was like the most incredible thing. I was beat out by a lady who was 79 years old. We were neck and neck on the bike. This lady was fierce. There was no messing around with her. And she and her husband had been doing triathletes together for 36 years. And they'd been married for over 50. So it was really sweet, really, really beautiful. There's such great energy. So it's worthy to help people stay in the sport, stay in a sport. And I mention this because there is some misinformation that came out. It happened many years ago, but there was a gentleman who ate a junk food diet. He got really into running and he wrote a book on running, and it became very popular. And then he keeled over. And for many years, the Western medical doctors were advised to recommend against running, saying that it wasn't healthy to do so much cardio activity. But the truth of the matter is that very sweet gentleman who changed his life and lost this weight by picking up running, there was one thing that he did not ever change, and that was his diet. He always kept a really junk foody kind of diet. And so he did die at a younger age from a cardiac situation. These days, we have a lot of people that need information about proper nutrition, and they need information about proper support. So let's get into it. My favorite VO2 max supplement is going to surprise you, but because it's not something that you typically think of when you think of the supplement line of, okay, like I got my performance stuff, right? You might think of, like the shakes, like the super shakes or Power Fuel and things like this. But there's one in particular that I really like here, and it's Brain Boost. It's Brain Boost. And the reason for that is because of a few different nutrients in there. The first one is acetyl L-carnitine, HCl. And this is why I'm gonna give you a long list here. And the reason for it is because it's a long list. It's really powerful. It has a muscle glycogen sparing effect. It increases ATP levels. It reduces reliance on anaerobic ATP production during high intensity exercise. That's really important for our endurance cardios. It reduces physical and mental fatigue. And let me tell you, it is really easy to get mental fatigue, and that will stop you just as much. One of my clients that I coached was an ultra marathoner, and in one of his training races, he had finished ultra marathon. He was doing about a 50-mile run that day, and he had finished the first loop. He was at about 22 miles, and he came back to his station to refuel, because when you're running, you can't carry a lot on you. So you have to go to your station to refuel. And he sat down for a moment. He was allowed to carry his phone with him on this particular race. And he sat down to charge his phone. And that was it. He couldn't get back up. It was as much mental fatigue for him as it was physical fatigue. It was just like, yep, I'm done. So the importance of mental fatigue is not underplayed. In 2020, there were no spectators allowed at Ironman events. Mine was in Panama City, and there were some people, some locals that were out, but nothing like it had been in previous years. I had gone up and cheered for my friends in previous years, and huge crowds of people, and you cross the finish line, and there's like this huge embrace and everything. Nobody was allowed within like a quarter mile of the finish. And the people that were out were just locals kind of there anyway. They weren't necessarily there for the race because they couldn't be. And so there were a lot of like really drunk people just kind of like partying, which was cool. But cheering really helps, really helps on those long endurance cardios. So if you ever have a friend or an athlete that you're wondering if you should go support them, I just highly recommend that you go be there, because it really matters. The L-acetylcarnitine also improves exercise performance. It possesses good antioxidant activity. It improves antioxidant status. It detoxifies ammonia. Now, this is also really big, because our livers produce ammonia when a toxic amount of ammonia when they're stressed, when they've got too much going on that they're trying to get through. And your endurance cardio athletes are usually dealing with a lot of different situations. They're dealing with the stress of race day, which might be mental and emotional. That is contributed to by the stress of taper week, this is the phase in your training. You've been pushing it, going up and up and up. And then taper week, you have to take this strong dip down in order to be fresh for race day. But you kind of go nuts during this time because your body is used to going, and now you have to stop, and it's kind of crazy. And so that's a different type of stress that can often affect sleep, by the way. So the ammonia that can be produced due to either the stress of life or eating different foods, as your training levels change, then your athlete is going to be reaching out and trying to find different combinations of foods that really help them get the nutrients they need. At one point in my training, I was having to eat 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, and I just wasn't used to eating that much. So there was a little bit of like, oh my God, I'm starving, and I don't usually eat dairy or cheese, but like I really need some nutrient dense food right now. So their bodies might be under a little bit more stress, or maybe you've got your junk fooditarian that's training either for the first time or leveling up, and their livers are just still processing there. So it's very important, the detoxifying the ammonia. It increases blood flow to the heart and the working muscles. It improves recovery following exercise. It reduces muscle damage and soreness. It protects against exercise-induced oxidative stress, and it protects against hypoxic stress. So those are huge. Those are all really, really, really big advantages, all just from that acetyl L-carnitine in the Brain Boost. In addition to that, Brain Boost also has B12 and ginkgo biloba, which also help to improve that VO2 max. And anytime that you follow, if there's a sport that you like to follow, like maybe you like watching Tour de France, so you might hear about VO2 max there, then know that these are all nutrients that help to increase the circulation and the microcirculation, and that helps to increase the VO2 max. So Cool. That's your big golden nugget there. There are some other, let's move on to economy. So economy means the less oxygen you consume while running, the better running economy you have. And here again, it's exactly the same way. It really, really matters if you could have the right nutrient support. There is no way that I could have gotten through either my half Ironman or my Ironman while being a business owner, running a busy clinic, and getting my own and lifing, adulting in there without the proper nutrition. So, and if I wouldn't have had that proper nutrition, I would have had to decide to let something go, and it would have been my athletic pursuit, and I wouldn't have gotten to do what really mattered. I love seeing in my athletes, seeing them get to push their boundaries and to see their own improvements. So when we come to economy, my favorite supplement here is also probably going to surprise you because it's superbiotics. Simply put, the more nutrients you can absorb from your food, the better nutrition you're going to get to your cells. And it's that straightforward. This is a balanced yin and yang supplement and category, and it's really, really necessary. There's another one that I really like here, and I like it because it balances both dopamine and serotonin. So dopamine you can consider as a more yang neurotransmitter because it's like a go, go, go. I think your Wall Street stockbrokers are going to have a lot of dopamine. There's a really great book called The Edge Effect that talks about neurotransmitters in detail, and I refer to that a lot in my clinic. And serotonin is, of course, the feel good. So the more gentle, the more relaxed. You got to be able to push and excel. And then also you got to be able to amp down when it's time to amp down. So that's sleep time. And both sleep time and superbiotics help to enhance economy. And that helps to enhance both yin and yang. All right, the next one that we're going to talk about is the lactate threshold. In here, this is where blood lactate acid starts to increase rapidly. Usually this happens at 85% heart rate max or 75% of oxygen max. So those are approximations, but it's always going to happen at some point, right? So how do we help mitigate that? How do we move that through the quickest? And we're going to do that with two different nutrients. One of them is cholesterol red. Cholesterol red. And this, what we're really talking about here is decreasing inflammation in the body, right? Decreasing inflammation is going to be important for every athlete from I am just getting off the couch after a year of COVID. And that is a critical athlete to support because they have in their head the image of where they were a year ago, but their bodies might be in a very different place. I just had a gentleman walk in this week with that exact presentation. His temperature was 96.4. His pulse ox was 95. And these are abnormally low readings in a healthy individual. When he exercised before, he was cycling 20 miles a day. When he came to see me, he reported that even just 12 miles was really taxing him. And he was beating himself up because he was out of shape, or he felt he was. He's right that he was out of shape, but really pushing himself hard on endurance cardio at that moment wasn't the right thing to do. In fact, we had to order a Boston Heart Lab scan in order to get on the right track with him. So, and part of his program will be to decrease that inflammation because his heart has been struggling with this inflammation. So cholesterol red and sugar solve for the lactate threshold. And then finally, for that maximal exercise performance, this is primarily, okay, so lactic threshold, that's going to be really another boost yang. And then maximal threshold performance is going to be yin and yang again. Both have to be balanced in order to effectively push and reach your goals. Actually, for maximal exercise performance, we're going to come right back to superbiotics because we've got to be able to absorb the nutrients in the food in order to be able to push and do what we need to do. So I hope this has been helpful to you. I strongly, it's so lovely to see people who have grand goals who come to us and they want to do great things. And we absolutely need to support them because they need somebody to walk that journey with them. And we need to do it in a smart, intelligent, capable way. So for people who have cardiac presentation issues that in some way, shape, or form, the other thing I'll do is I'll take the blood pressure on the left side and on the right side. And if there's a significant difference, either in the systolic from left to right or the diastolic, especially the diastolic from left to right, that's another blip on the scanner that we're looking at cardiac performance issues. So critical in those moments to get the right data, to run whatever additional cardiac tests you want to run, whether it's the Boston Heart Lab scan or you want to refer them to a cardiologist if you're not comfortable going over that information with them. But they need a friend. They need someone who can walk with them on that journey. And there's a real disconnect in the athlete community. There is a lot of, okay, what I'm going to do for inflammation is I'm going to push some Advil, and then I'm just going to get out there and I'm going to rock it the next day, and I'm going to go, go, go. And eventually I'm going to get there because I go, go, go. This is a very Yang approach. And the problem with that is that, for example, you probably know that that Advil is going to cause ulcers in the small intestine within 7 days in 100% of healthy volunteers who took NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. They experienced ulcers in the small intestine within 7 days. So it's not a good approach. And there are a fair amount of endurance cardio athletes, most of them to some degree, that believe that because they're doing this hard work, then they should get to eat whatever they want. And that can cause hardship on their bodies. In addition to that, a lot of them don't realize that they have underlying gut disorders and that the reason that their hearts are affected, their lungs are affected, their performance is affected is because they aren't they aren't getting the nutrients out of their food that they think they are, because it's just blocked. It's just not happening. So it shows up in the performance. It's one of the great things about working with athletes is that you get a lot more time. You get a lot more window usually of, oh, okay, we're starting to see flags at this phase rather than, you know, we're really sick. We're in the illness phase. We get to see it at the performance phase. So it's really an honor to get to walk that journey with them. I hope very much that this has been helpful to you. And let me just ask, are there any questions?
Hi, it's me. I pop up in the corner. I'm like, boop, here I am. No, that was great. I love how you off-labeled so many of our products that you just had a different twist on it. And I loved, how you used the brain formulas and just to balance different things in the body, and not just brain, but ATP and cardiovascular and how it all connects. I think that's the biggest thing we miss, is that we can't segregate the body. It's all connected. So I really enjoyed this in your approach. So this was really good.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. It's just really such an honor to be here and to serve. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, of course. We'll definitely have you back. And I hope to see you in Tampa soon when I'm there. So if you want to reach out to Cynthia and to have a virtual appointment, or anyone at that clinic, they can contact you. What is your contact information so we can share it?
Yeah, absolutely. Our phone number is area code 941-923-9355, or you can email us at office@longevitywc, like wellness clinic, longevitywc.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Dr. Cynthia. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This was spectacular. I hope you share it with somebody who is an endurance athlete who may have some of those cardiovascular risks associated. This is just a great way to be more investing into your health and preventative rather than reactive. And that's where we all need to get to. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, stay tuned because we are up for our next lecture at 11 a.m. We're going to have a great discussion here at 12 on label reading. But right before that, let's check out our schedule. Dr. Gideon Orbach is coming back. He's going to be doing part 2 of his chiropractic neurology and rehab, home and workstations. So thanks, guys, for being here. Stay tuned.